Hey everyone, welcome to NoDQ video here on NoDQ.com and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/AaronRift NoDQ. We have Elimination Chamber coming up and I have your questions regarding that pay-per-view as well as other topics, so let's get started today. First one comes from KO Mania. Yo Aaron, saw your comments on possibly doing a two-show Wrestlemania for Raw and SmackDown Live. Do you think that they should do it on two separate days? Hall of Fame Friday, one WrestleMania Saturday, and the other Sunday, so we wouldn't have the Raw 25 problem. Interesting question. There are major events, for instance, Coachella, where they do it over separate nights. Now, I think the problem would be making as much money as WWE is making with the current format. There's an old saying, if it's not broken, why fix it? Now, I do feel like WWE is going overboard with these 7-hour WrestleMania events. One might think, hey, why not split it up into separate nights? One night you could do Raw, one night you could do SmackDown, or you could even mix it up and just have 2 nights. That way people don't get burned out. The problem with that is making as much money. On one hand, you could have everyone that buys a ticket for WrestleMania, that ticket gets you into both nights. That's one possibility, but the fact is it's going to be very expensive to run in a stadium a second night. WWE would have to raise the ticket prices, I think, significantly for that to be profitable. The other option is to run in a smaller building for 2 nights, but then again, the same thing. WWE would have to raise the ticket prices to make up for the money that they would lose running in a smaller venue. It's a tricky situation, and I think if it was logical from a business standpoint, I think WWE would have tried it by now. The fact that they haven't makes me feel that they are satisfied with what they're doing right now. They're making money. They're filling up those stadiums. They can do 7-hour WrestleManias and get away with it and still make the big bucks. So as long as the format works for them, I don't see them changing. But as a viewer, I like that idea of doing WrestleMania on 2 nights and breaking it up. What would you do with NXT in the Hall of Fame? You might have to change that up a little bit. Maybe run Thursday night and then Friday night and then the first WrestleMania night. But then you have something like 6 straight nights of wrestling, so that could be a negative. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Eventually, though, as a viewer, I hope WWE will, at the very least, shorten the WrestleMania shows. 7 hours as a viewer, it can get very frustrating at times. This next one comes from Nathan Hawks. Do you believe the first ever women's Elimination Chamber match is a good idea? On paper, I think it's a good idea to do it. Why not? Let the women have this epic grudge match. But that's where the problem is. It's a grudge match. And I feel like Elimination Chamber has become just a placeholder match until WrestleMania. In general, I'm not a fan of the themed pay-per-views. For those of you that have been watching my videos over the years, you know this. You know I'm not a big fan of it. I'd rather have a storyline lead up to a major stipulation match. I'd like to see a storyline build up to Elimination Chamber rather than just say, hey, we have Elimination Chamber pay-per-view coming up. We have to have Elimination Chamber matches. As far as should the women be in an Elimination Chamber match? Sure, why not? They already did Hell in a Cell. They already did the Royal Rumble. Why not? I mean, I think the Royal Rumble turned out better than I was expecting, and I think if the match is laid out correctly and under the right circumstances, the women can pull it off. I'm not against that idea. I also think that it's too soon, you know. I feel like WWE's doing this just because they're trying to be progressive. Hey, look at us. We're putting the women in there. They're equal to men, all that stuff. And they're just throwing it out there. I'd rather see WWE save it, maybe wait 6 months and then do a women's Elimination Chamber match. But again, that's the problem with having a pay-per-view called Elimination Chamber. You feel like you have to do it now rather than wait 6 months. If there was no Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, WWE could wait on it and maybe do it in June. And that way, it would give the women more focus. The focus would be put on the women because it would be the only Elimination Chamber match instead of having 2 in one night. I think that puts extra pressure on the women to have to perform at a high level. But then again, maybe that's what works. Maybe when you're under pressure, that's when you give your best performances. I just feel, again, as a fan, as a viewer, I think it's overkill. I think it's too much in a short period of time. In general, I'm not a fan of 2 Elimination Chamber matches in one night, just like I wasn't a big fan of WWE doing the 2 Rumbles in one night. It ended up working out for WWE. Maybe it'll work out for Elimination Chamber, but generally, I'm not a fan of doing too much at one time. Just like with that previous question about having WrestleMania be 7 hours, it's too much. But WWE's attitude is, if they can get away with doing it, they're going to do it. And it is what it is. They're going to do the Women's Elimination Chamber match. It may work, it may not, but it will be, for the most part, business as usual in WWE. Got this one here from NJ Sickboy. How about Asuka wins at Elimination Chamber match and then challenges Charlotte at WrestleMania to unify the women's division? Interesting idea. Have Asuka win the Raw Women's title and then face Charlotte and unify the titles. I'm a fan of that if WWE is going to perhaps introduce more titles. I think that there's too many titles as it is. You know, people have asked me about WWE maybe introducing a tag team women's championship and stuff like that. I would prefer, personally, again, as a viewer, I feel there's too many championships, and I always preferred the concept of having one world champion, one tag team champion, one IC/US champion, one women's champion, and have that champion appear on both shows. That way, there's even more incentive to be the champion, because if you're the champion, you're on both shows, you're making more money. You know, it's a good thing if you're the champion and you get to be on both shows. It's something to fight for, in addition to just having the championship and having that recognition. You get to be on both shows. There's a monetary gain to it. So I think I like the idea of unifying the women's title, and I quite frankly, I think all the titles should be unified. And then at that point, maybe you could introduce 1 or 2 more titles. Maybe a women's tag team title. Maybe a 6-man championship, which is something that I've proposed for a while now, since WWE loves their 6-man or 6-woman tag team matches. And it's just something different that we haven't seen in WWE. It would be a breath of fresh air to do something like that. So yes, to answer your question, I like the idea. This one comes from It's the Costanza. Hey Aaron, thanks for answering my question as always. But now that the XFL is happening again, do you see Shane McMahon or anyone else really taking over the XFL role of ownership if Vince unfortunately passes away by the year 2020? In the event that Vince did die before the XFL relaunched, I'm sure there are plenty of people surrounding him that would carry on and run the XFL. I think it would continue. Now, keep in mind, Shane is a performer right now. He's not involved in business decisions in WWE. He is there. He was brought back as a television performer. That's what Shane is doing right now. With that being said, I would not rule out Shane possibly getting involved in the business end of it again if something happened to Vince. I could see that as a possibility. But I do think the XFL would go on. To answer your question, with or without Vince, would Shane be involved? That's up in the air. I don't know about that. Could happen. Might not happen, who knows. This one comes from Mr. Yuck. With XFL, his age, and recent WWE changes, do you think Vince McMahon sees the writing on the wall? Is Stephanie that bad being in charge with Triple H? Dirt Sheets talk as if she is Dixie Carter bad. I think Vince just wants to right a wrong from the XFL. Vince is, you guys got to keep in mind, Vince is a very driven person. He wants to succeed. The only thing he knows is success. If he fails at something, he's the guy that's going to get back on that horse and try again and keep riding until he's successful at it. And that's what he wants to do with the XFL. The XFL was one of Vince McMahon's, arguably it was his biggest blemish in his professional career. And I think Vince wants to give it another shot. He's got the money to do it. And I think Vince just wants to do it for his own personal goal. He wants to right that wrong and make the XFL a success and show the world that he was right all along and the XFL had the potential. It just wasn't done right the first time. Will it work? For me personally, I have my serious doubts about it, but Vince is Vince. He's going to do what he's going to do. I don't think it really has anything to do with WWE and Vince stepping away from that. Vince will always be part of WWE. I think he'll be running it until the day he dies. He will always be part of it. And as far as Stephanie goes and being as bad as Dixie Carter, I think Stephanie has picked up a lot of her father's business senses, and I think she'll carry on. Her and Triple H, the ship will continue to sail without Vince. How different will it be? I mean, people have been speculating on this for years. Will WWE be the same? Will it be drastically different? I think it'll be somewhat different, but it'll be more or less the same. People say, will WWE be more like NXT when Vince is gone? That's a possibility, but at the same time, Triple H is a smart guy. He knows what he's doing with NXT. He's catering to the indie/New Japan fans and fans of other promotions. He knows what he's doing, but when it comes to WWE and the mainstream, Triple H knows you have to do it a little bit differently. So I think more or less it'll end up pretty much the same with maybe slight. What is slight? I just made up a word here. Slight differences. This one comes from Mikey. Should WWE have brought back the World Heavyweight Championship instead of the Universal title? I'm fine with the decision to give it a new name. It's a new brand extension, and you don't want to do exactly the same thing, even though the title is basically just the secondary world title. It's a whole new lineage and whatnot, so I was fine with it. New era, new championship. I really didn't have a problem with introducing a new title. I think bringing back the World Heavyweight Championship would have just made it feel like the old brand extension. And when you're doing something new, you want to change things up a bit. So I was fine with it. But again, going back to earlier, my ultimate preference is one world championship with the world champion appearing on both shows. So I would be totally fine with a unification match at some point and just have the world champion be on both shows. This next one comes from Alan. Who do you think will be the next challengers for the Raw and SmackDown Live Tag Team Championships? Who on the NXT roster could come up for WrestleMania 34 to face up against either the Bar or the Usos? I don't think it's going to be any team because the teams are not established on the main roster. For instance, Authors of Pain. I'm guessing they will be called up very soon. But once they are called up, they have to be established on the main roster. WWE's not going to call up a team before WrestleMania and throw them into a tag team title match. I highly doubt we're going to see that. As far as opponents for the tag teams at WrestleMania, for the Bar and the Usos, going back to earlier again, I'd love to see a unification match and just have one set of tag team champions appearing on both shows. But I don't think that's going to happen. For the bar, that really depends. I mean, there's not a lot of options right now. Maybe Anderson and Gallows. I like that idea. Maybe the Revival. Would not shock me if WWE just does another multi-team match like they did last year with the ladder match. They could potentially do a triple threat tag team match. You know, it's WrestleMania, so WWE's got to get as many teams as possible on the show and make everybody happy. You know, it's good for morale to have everyone get a spot at WrestleMania. But as far as one team versus one team, I think right now I would probably go with the Bar versus Anderson and Gallows, unless WWE decides to do the Club with Anderson and Gallows and Balor against, say, the Miz Taraj. In that case, maybe the Revival. I know I said the Revival is basically Ascension 2.0 now. Maybe WWE could revive them. As far as SmackDown Live goes, I said this before, I'd love to see Rusev and Aiden English get that opportunity. I feel like Rusev Day has cooled off considerably, but I'd still love to see that. I'd love to see them pushed as the top tag team to face the Usos. You could do Shelton Benjamin and Chad Gable again, but Usos already beat them 2 straight falls. I feel like that's done with now and it's on to the next team. So we'll see what happens. I mean, again, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of good options for either team on Raw and SmackDown right now. And maybe the best option is put the 2 teams against each other, Usos versus Benjamin and Gable. What do you guys think? Leave a comment on the YouTube channel and on NoDQ.com and let me know. This one comes from Dave. Assuming John Cena and Undertaker is going to happen at WrestleMania, do you see Undertaker costing John Cena the Chamber match to kickstart the feud? Well, that doesn't really make sense unless Undertaker is provoked. Is John Cena going to come out prior to Elimination Chamber and say something to insult The Undertaker? How would WWE even get to that point? I don't see Undertaker showing up randomly to attack John Cena. He's not Bray Wyatt. He's not this guy that just randomly appears and starts feuds with people, especially when Undertaker is a babyface character. So I don't know about that. How do you get to John Cena versus The Undertaker? One would think that Cena himself might challenge The Undertaker and call him out for one final match. Maybe they even do career versus career. I've heard people speculate on that. That would be an interesting matchup where the loser retires. Although, as I've said before, I think Undertaker should be winning this match. Is John Cena really going to retire? I don't think so. It is interesting. How will WWE get to Undertaker versus Cena? Or is it just going to be one of those situations where Undertaker comes out, cuts a promo, you know, what we thought we were going to see at Raw 25, where Undertaker would come out, say he's retiring, and then bam, the horns hit, John Cena comes out and says he wants one final match with Undertaker, give the fans the match at WrestleMania they've never seen, Undertaker versus John Cena. So that's my guess. Undertaker will come out, cut a promo, retiring, Cena will come out, bam, they set up the match. This one comes from Triple C. Do you think Nakamura versus Styles will be on the same level as their match at Wrestle Kingdom, or will they be held back? Also, what are your thoughts on Sanity possibly getting brought up to Raw and SmackDown after Mania? Should Eric Young go alone? To answer Nakamura and Styles, I hope so. It's going to be for the WWE title, so yeah, they should be allowed to have the best match possible and steal the show and give the fans the best WrestleMania match that people have seen in a very long time. Are they capable of it? Absolutely. Will they be given the opportunity? That remains to be seen. If that match is, say, the 4th match from the top, which I'm guessing it will be in terms of importance at least, then they might be told to hold back, in which case it's going to fall short of being an all-time classic. But in my opinion, WWE title, it should be the match of the night. They should have no limitations. It's WrestleMania, for crying out loud. Who cares if they outshine Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns and John Cena and Undertaker? It's WrestleMania. It's the WWE title. Let them go out there and steal the show. As far as Sanity, yes, I think there's a very good chance we'll see them get called up soon, maybe as a group. Honestly, I'm not the biggest Eric Young fan. I think he's a good wrestler. He's got an interesting look. He's a good promo, but I don't really see the greatness in him like some others do. I think he's strongest with the group. So yeah, I think if you're going to call up Eric Young, I think you should call up Sanity and bring them in as a group. Maybe align them with Bray Wyatt. Maybe have them feud with Bray Wyatt or do something like that. But yeah, I think Eric Young is strongest with a group of people. And I think he'll flourish more in WWE as part of a group rather than as a singles competitor. This one comes from TJS. Are you tired of WWE Cesaro? Uh-oh, TJS with the controversial question here. Gonna get some heat, I'm sure. I remember when he was struggling to get TV time, but now he has more on-air time than most wrestlers and has won the tag championship 4 times in 2 years. I like the bar, but I feel like fans have turned on Cesaro. Well, he's a heel, so naturally the fans should be booing the guy, TJS. If they're booing him, then that's the way it's supposed to be. Cesaro's a heel. Heels should get booed. I don't think the fans are tired of him. I think they're booing him because he's a bad guy. I love you, TJS, but that question, how can you even ask that? Are fans tired of Cesaro? Cesaro's great. He's an awesome wrestler, and I don't think fans will ever get tired of the guy. I think he could wrestle every night, and the fans would never get tired of him. He's one of the best in the world. But yeah, I'm happy that the fans are booing him because he's a good heel. Him and Sheamus, they're good heel characters, and we don't see that enough in wrestling. I feel like in this era, we don't have true heels. And if somebody's getting booed, that doesn't mean fans are sick of them. It just means that guy's doing his job and he's being an effective heel. That's just how I see it, at least. But thank you for the question. Still love you, man. And thank you for moderating during the live videos. All right, that'll wrap it up for this edition of NoDQ video. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about today's video. Lots of interesting stuff that I discussed today. Please feel free to share your opinions, what you agree with, what you disagree with, any ideas you have regarding WrestleMania, Elimination Chamber, and all that good stuff. And I will see you guys next time for another edition of NoDQ video.